Yeah.
I would say like specific for Journey to the West. So it was a government project, and the head of the project, who was like the mayor of Huai'an or the vice mayor of Huai'an, I forget what the position was.
Mhm.
I would say he specifically was a very reasonable person
Mhm.
that was very open to discussions and different factors. Because even when the project started, like they had a scholar, they said the foremost scholars of Journey to the West. And to him, the story is a linear experience. It's a linear story, which it is, right? More or
Mhm.
less. I mean, A to B, journey, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And he said, well, that's what the experience has to be. It has to be linear. And well, that's not going to functionally work in a theme park. You can't have a linear experience because there'll be choke points and so forth and so on.
Right.
So, and we talked, so there was, for lack of better, due to like maybe a lack of experience dealing with theme parks or dealing with entertainment destinations, that there was like a little bit of, I don't know, maybe you'd say conflict in the early days.
Mhm.
But in the same instance, I think a lot of people, at least on the West, they don't understand like the nature of maybe personal conflict in, say, like China,
Mhm.
where it's not so personal, even if it sounds personal. And I think certain people get really, really frustrated,
Mhm.
and they unfortunately elevate like a small thing into a larger breaking point, when
Mhm.
it's like you must understand, like, whatever the criticism or comment or whatever they may be saying, like, for lack of a word, is kind of an argumentative society, that you just, but they don't take it personally. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't take it personally either. And I think a lot of firms like really struggled with that idea, dealing with China specifically.
Mhm.
Obviously they're not going to see the same type of thing in like Japan or maybe Korea.
Mhm.
But China's a different beast than the other two.
Yeah.
Uh, as well as we all know, culturally, they're very, very different from the Koreans and very, very different from the Japanese. And if somebody thought that the Japanese approach would work there, it's like, well, it is very different. So
Yeah.
there is like a willingness to understand the variance in culture just on a day-to-day conversational operational side.
Mhm.
Um, I think for Journey to the West, it was very important to understand the source material.
Mhm.
So, we read the book, all 100 and whatever chapters,
Yeah.
to be prepared. Not everybody on the team, but certainly I read it, and it does seem like a lot of other firms maybe don't put the time and effort into really understanding
Mm.
the IP like in depth in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, oh, it's a Monkey King, and Monkey Kings do this, and I saw a movie or something like that. And well, that's, we were doing something based off the book.
Yeah.
And granted, I read an English translation that is not off the original lyrical poetry, but a translation to more of a plot-based element. But still, we understand the plot, we understand the concept, we understand the nature of the characters, we understand what they represent.
Mhm.
And I think in that way, it gave a trust to our clients that we actually knew the IP very well. And I think that goes true for a lot of the other IP, where we will spend the time to try it, to understand it.
Mhm.
Like Peanuts. I think we have a very deep understanding of Peanuts. So it made it very easy to not make mistakes of like just kind of, you know, doing things that violate the IP. Like,
Sure.
so Journey West, we had no issues with violation. So there's a cultural side that I think was tall. We also had a client side that was very reasonable and
Mhm.
respectful. Um, versus like when we worked with Wanda, it was much more of like a factory to get things done.
Mm.
And I don't know if like they really grasped fully what they were engaging into,
Mhm.
the depth of like what the experience, like how important the experience and everything has to be, how important these things are for people to care about going to these places,
Right.
versus like just kind of, I don't want to say cookie cutter rides, but kind of like a cookie cutter approach to
Sure.
everything.
Sure. Yeah.
So
To that issue, when you're translating the theme park experience to China, is there are there any unique elements that you feel like you've had to bring in? So like, is there maybe like a non-typical attraction mix or experiences that would be found in the Chinese theme parks that you guys designed compared to theme parks elsewhere?
Not really, in general, but there's some. difference. For example, Chinese people, they in general, they don't like too much extreme rides,
Mhm.
right? So we try to avoid that kind of things. That's something that we learn with the time. Uh, Even it's very common with clients. They always say, "We want to go faster. We want to have the biggest in the world.
Mhm.
We want something that never did before," which is almost impossible. It's everything is already invented.
Right.
But I think the key is how you uh, evolve about uh, um, from that.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, one of the things that we need to keep always uh, running is our imagination to create something more unique. I don't think that we will invent something that somebody never see, but
Mhm.
we try to get that originality on the designs
Mhm.
that Chinese client they like to see that. If you come with something, oh, but we saw this in that part, we saw that in that part,
Yeah.
they immediately will discard us. So we always pushing, trying to create something at least that looks different than others.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's is
Yeah.
a challenge because it's you need to work over existing bases sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think that is uh, for us also our strong point, trying to create this kind of a very original rides or designs.
Mhm.
Uh, Sometimes dealing with okay, how much this can cost because it's easy to design something spectacular at a very high price,
Mhm.
but we need to find something that is something in the middle that is unique, but at the same time uh, something that you can do.
Mhm.
And we not always deal with clients that they have all the budget,
Mhm.
so we need to come with these very original ideas.
Mhm.
I do think as much as we're often asked for new and never been seen before, they also in the same breath ask for proof of concept.
Right.
So, the nature of never been seen, but show us one that worked
Right.
and
Do it within budget.
and within budget.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a very like the reality is it's not very focused on R&D and truly new things. And that's
Mm.
fine. Like the world
Yeah.
of new is whatever.
Yeah.
Um so but I do think like and they also oftentimes want to, their first selection for some type of vendor for like a ride or attraction will be local, and they
Mhm.
want to focus on local first.
Mhm.
So you have to recognize it has to be something that we can augment in a pre-existing thing that they, so cladding or whatever, elements to make it a little more tailored.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, the core machinery, the core everything is going to be most likely one of a selection of a local designer. Now that's not only because I know like Tornado-S, went to Christie and went to whoever to get, projectors. So
Mhm.
there are things where they just simply can't do. And
Right.
when they happen to do large coasters,
Mhm.
like Changzhou Dino Park, I think they went to Vekoma to get their 4-year coaster.
Mhm.
So, which is a whole different argument for them. But so it's the idea that like we know it's more story based,
Mhm.
it's more slow moving, it's not really thrill based.
Mhm.
Typically you have the family side of it.
Sure.
Uh, they have, the planning side is difficult because as we've all discussed, during the week, people don't really have the free time. So it's
Sure.
like really high capacity, way over capacity weekends, and then you have close to nobody on the
Yeah.
weekdays. So how do you really make that work without
Yeah.
overbuilding and overspending?
Yeah.
Which I don't know if there's like a clean, pure answer for that, because at the end of the day, like it's sort of like it's a challenge that I don't think anybody can exactly solve.
Mhm.
Probably as China, grows and develops and middle classes even further and further established, they'll have those like more normal attendance trends like we do, would say in the West.
Right.
Uh, It's probably a matter of time, I would assume.
Mhm.
I do think like they are big on utilizing media a lot,
Mm.
and sometimes there's an over need to do like really crazy like singular experiential stuff when you're doing like say like a family entertainment center.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you need places for kids to play. And it
Right.
doesn't all have to be high-end, high-tech, 7-minute, one-time shot experience that you wait in line for.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need an area for kids to play because they will play there for an hour or an hour
Right.
and a half, and
Right.
kids get excited to go back. So you need that balance of like the big fancy thing to build the marketing, to draw attention, to bring people into the facility. But you
Mhm.
do need to like do, for lack of a word, traditional fun elements
Mhm.
because I don't know if a 7-year-old cares that much about the newest technology in terms
Sure.
of ride experience. But
Yeah.
they do care about running around and playing and going down slides and bouncing around and throwing balls and
Yeah.
or painting or drawing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I do think sometimes people get a little overblown, over love of like technology for technology's sake.
Mhm.
And I think, as long as we know that technology could do some really neat things, but it's at the end of the day, it's more to enhance kind of a pre-existing concept of an experience
Mhm.
versus being the core. Like nobody is going to the park because of, somebody's new technical element.
Sure. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not the draw. Nobody knows. I don't know if anybody really cares outside of some really hardcore people.
Mhm.
So, you gotta approach it in a way that is still fun and exciting, but a little flashy, and one or two things that you could claim are more or less new, just to get people in the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, so related to that question, what I've always wanted to ask is, it seems like from the work that you guys do, it spans like a very large range. So it's not just theme parks, but it's also indoor attractions, and it looks like you've done museums, and one has a background in residential. As you set out to design these things, which are all visitor experiences in some form, is there like an element that stays the same across all of them, or is every new type just kind of like a different animal in terms of designing it?
Well, obviously, theme park is a different thing because it's a lot of concept design that is a kind of you can go from history
Mhm.
to science fiction in the future.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen in residential or hotel, maybe because they are themed inside the theme park, but other projects is it's not like that. But the theme park, what I like is you have this vast spectrum of theming that sometimes you design something related to history, sometimes you design something to cultural elements,
Mhm.
or as I say, pirates, science fictions, or technology, or just creativity, playing with color. Is a like an infinite array of things.
Mhm.
The other projects are more restricted. You have more parameters that you need to follow, uh, rules, codes that are more strict in some ways than on theme parks.
Mhm.
Um, Theme parks, usually you have some kind of a freedom of shapes. You have limitations sometimes because of the height or some limits, but in general, you don't have like a rectangular shape that you need to fit something, right?
Mhm.
Like in a house or in a building that you need to follow that.
Right.
In that way, it's completely different. The process of design maybe can be the same. We start with some research, we propose ideas, the same process,
Mhm.
but the way of thinking for one and another is different. The In a residential or hotel, you need to establish the who will use that.
Mhm.
Couple of people, a family, but theme parks are hundreds of people
Mhm.
moving continuously. So circulation, access, everything is completely different. The security, it's a complete different story.
Mm.
I think even it's more funny or visually more rich, but I think it's more complex than other projects
Yeah,
in many ways.
sure, sure.
I,
Yeah.
I would say like fundamentally, when you're creating, um, we'll say a fantasy world, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
And not everything we do is fantasy world, but something that's not normal life, right? Something that's different.
Mhm.
There's an element of you're an explorer as a guest. So I think there's always the idea of the transitioning into the fantasy world that is, the technique of how you do it and how you get there is kind of similar. Some kind of like the gateway, the portal, how you enter the world, making sure the world is fully enclosed so you don't see the outside world as best you can or hints of the outside world.
Mhm.
I think the concept of finding things behind corners type of thing. So not necessarily a bunch of straight lines and long pathways and
Yeah.
long corridors. Like those are always gonna hold true no matter what you design.
Mhm.
Because people like the idea to like explore. You feel like you're discovering something.
Yeah.
And I think those are psychologically always strong elements.
Mhm.
Uh, in terms of like raw elements like the psychology of the guest.
Yeah.
Um, there's certain trends that we adhere to, like in theme park, you have your entry retail, which is also your exit point. Singular entrance and exit points in general, we prefer
Mhm.
for flow and operational issues.
Yeah.
Um, how back of house operates, how you structure your guest flow and your back of house flow, or whatever you may call it. Those are these are underlying concepts that are always going to be addressed in many ways, addressed not in the same shape, but in the same theory, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Uh, so it's like I think there are obviously basic fundamentals that do go across, but they're broad,
Yeah.
you know, they're very
Understood.
And the way that the people lives these projects is completely different. When you go to a theme park, you go with your mind on having fun. In other projects, is you're not thinking on that. It's
Yeah.
just a space to stay, to live, eat, or buy.
Yeah.
But in the theme park, you are your mind is completely free and enjoy the moment.
Sure.
So you
Yeah.
enjoy
like
the park in a different way.
we work on commercial and like shopping centers as well and like wineries. And I think to some degree, you have it's still a different it's not mushrooms and rainbows fantasy,
Mhm.
but it is still otherworldly in a way, or fantasy-ish,
Sure.
even like luxury is a fantasy. These are all fantasies.
Mhm.
So you still address the idea of entering and exiting a fantasy world, discovering the fantasy world once you're there,
Yeah.
and exploring. So
Yeah. Are there any noteworthy projects that you guys have worked on in the last few years that you could mention and talk about the process um, from beginning to end?
Well, I can mention, I cannot share or can show.
Okay.
um, as a consultant, uh, I work on the Imagineering project for the Tokyo resort expansion that will open this year.
Nice.
Uh, I just finished as a consultant also for Hetema TAG for
Mhm.
this a new park that they will build here in US, the Heart of America.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Recent projects. Okay, let's go back to probably 5 years, 6 years ago. The MNC Park in Indonesia that is always delay and delay.
Yeah.
Uh, and then recently, well, the Hetema thing, and we just finished some projects in China for family center,
Mhm.
indoor small theme park based on IP.
Mhm.
That is the latest project that we just finished like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Um, And then in the past, I can mention many others that mm, we did several ideas in the past for projects that never came to life, like Universal Moscow or DreamWorks, also for indoor theme park. Those never happened.
Yeah.
But then we did some a cultural theme park in Japan in the last 2 years,
Mhm.
more or less. I'm trying to think chronologically. Uh,
I think they claim they're building the line in Saudi
oh, the
Arabia.
land, yeah, I did like a
I
20.
don't know. I mean, it's
No, no, I saw pictures.
yeah, they're moving dirt and
They're building something. I don't know if they will finish that, but they asked us to design 20 concepts for the line.
Wow.
So
yeah,
there
different
are,
areas. Not
yeah,
the whole thing, but like
Yeah.
entertainment district.
they
They
gave us different sectors. We designed the sector with a big theater,
Mhm.
a sector with the convention center
Mhm.
and restaurants. Then
coastal hotel
which one?
hotel on the coast.
Hotel.
It was
Yeah,
off.
hotel and outside the wall, like a resort on the beach,
Mhm.
the waterfront for that.
If we could briefly talk, like Journey to West is built, it's operational, so I think there's nothing wrong with talking about it now. We could, like
Sure.
it's um so it started with one Huai'an. You were part of that too, right? That's where we met you? No?
No, I don't think so.
I don't
We,
remember.
we met on the Jinhu project, I think.
Oh, okay, Jinhu Yao. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was same a lot of same people from that because it was Jinhu's in Huai'an, so it was the same government
Right,
affairs
right.
connected. Okay, yeah, the Emperor Yao Mother
Yep.
project. Yeah, so it was a fun project. The so Journey to West. So Huai'an is the birthplace of Wu Cheng'en, who wrote Journey to the West. So Journey to the West was written in that town. So
Huh.
there's a strong significance and as we know, it's one of the four major literary like canons in China. So
Sure.
it's it's basically every single legend of everything. It's it's everything tied into one. So it's important in terms of the structure, the story of what it is. Everybody knows it, so it's a wildly well-known IP, wildly well-known storyline. There's importance in maintaining the characters and the storylines correctly, obviously, because they represent real things to people.
Yep.
So it did begin with the idea they want to do a theme park, so they got that part cleared.
Mhm.
Plus a museum and some other elements and entry, like a city walk type of thing. Um, so they brought in a scholar to talk about, the story. And, there's what, 100 chapters, seven of of the Monkey King birth story, two of like weird stuff, and then then you have the Wu Cheng the Sangzan monk story, and then the start of the actual journey with the team.
Mhm.
So, out of you obviously can't cover the entire thing.
Mhm.
So we did say, how do we break this into pieces that we could digest into a theme park? And there's always the opportunity to expand, so we could worry about stuff later. Well, let's
Mhm.
get some like core things. And
Mhm.
working with the scholar, we kind of extracted what are some real core stories that have to be told in the course of it.
Mhm.
Obviously there was the Monkey King, the actual, the seven chapters of the birth of Monkey King, of, Sun Wukong becoming the Monkey
Yeah.
King.
Yeah.
And of course with, the the Buddha smashing him into the ground and imprisoning him.
Right.
So, we that because it's such a rich story, and in many ways it's the most like beloved part of the whole, even though it's not a very large part of the book, it is obviously the part that's always translated to movies and
Yeah.
cartoons and comic books and things like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And we understand the rebellious nature of Sun Wukong is very appealing to, at the time, China as a general, and then, how kind of culturally they operate. But so we ended up like carving out, like we knew that we needed a children's area. we knew that we needed, you know, a couple different zones. So I think we came up with, I don't know, was it 6 zones, Juan, or 6 plus the castle, not including the outside
Yeah,
stuff?
6 with the castle.
Yeah, so I think it was 6 total zones. And then we did want to have some signature element that's visually noticeable, much like the, you know, the much like the Disney Castle.
Mhm.
It is theoretically a good idea to have. You have a wayfinding device that also visually is interesting.
Right.
So it was first coming up with what that would be. And at one point it was the waterfall, the flowers of fruit mounted, but really that's not the core of Journey to the West. That's the core of the first 7 chapters. And it's really just the birthplace of Wuchang. And that's where we said, what is, you know, what is really the point of the journey is to go and get the scrolls. And the scrolls were on Thunder Peak and Huai'an Temple.
Mhm.
So we said, okay, we should make that the signature element. Because one, it's a mountain. Mountains are cool. It's a
Mhm.
temple. Temples can be visually cool.
Right.
And it makes sense. It's the destination, it's the goal, it's the purpose of the story is to go there.
Mhm.
So it makes sense as the iconic feature.
Right.
Now, the funny thing in doing that is that a neighboring town claims that the Five-Finger Mountain from the book is based off a mountain in their village. So it said, well, you're not allowed, we don't want to anger the town, so you
Right.
cannot call it Thunder Mountain. Like, we cannot have that.
Mhm.
And then it ended up, we just like, but it's okay to call it the temple. So we still built the mountain, but just called it like Huai'an Temple, which is where the scrolls are held, which
Sure.
happens to be on a mountain, which happens to be on Thunder Peak. But we
Right.
just don't call it Thunder Peak, and that's kind of the workaround to achieve that goal, which it took a little like finessing to get everybody to agree in and the neighboring villages and politically there was involvement there. But
Yeah.
everybody, you know, it was like anything. You could find when somebody says you cannot do this, it's like,
Yeah.
well, why can't we do this? And what's really the issue? And I mean, I don't want to say like, let's finagle our way around it, but there's always the nature of a rule and the purpose of the rule and the rule itself are not all the same thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's understand the nature of the issue, and then we could solve that nature. And then once we solved it, we were able to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I know one definitely wanted a large, like a water feature, a large pond, right, as a signature element, which besides the visual strength of it, also can be utilized as a show element as well. And you know, it's good for flow, and there's a lot of different, you know, there's benefits as well. I mean, one could talk further about the value of what bodies of
Oh
water.
yeah, you need to add it's like when you write the speech for a movie, you need to create beside the core of the thing, you need to incorporate some element to make it more rich and more enjoyable, right? Base it or companion of that story. But yeah, it's one thing that uh, is very important, at least personally, when I present something, is that I always want to be sure that what I'm saying on the presentation, I can respond any question.
Mm.
One of my biggest fear is that if the client asks me something that I cannot respond, like why you put this one, or why you did this, or what's the reason? I want everything explained. I want a reason for everything. Everything on the drawings, everything. There's a reason why it's there.
Yeah.
It's not randomly put it there.
Yep.
So we did a lot of research. We dedicate a lot of time to investigate and fundament our design.
Yeah.
So that's is something that every time we go to a presentation, I feel safe in that matter,
Yeah.
that we can justify everything.
Yeah.
So
Understood.
yeah, I think on Journey West, due to size, like projected size and available marketplace, what I don't exactly remember what the numbers are off the top of my head, but I know like we broke up, you know, X amount of dining. I think there's a dining facility in 4 of the zones, not including the entry area.
Mhm.
So, you know, it was then like, how do we, once you broke up those elements and we broke up X amount of attractions in each area, they did want coasters. They said, we want coasters. And somehow they came up with a number, we want 2 coasters. So we said, well, okay, well, we know that we have to throw that into the program mix. We will get to that.
Mhm.
Um, the zone placement, we're looking at the stories they gave us, like what are, again, what's a larger way of breaking up the story into pieces. And it did come into like a north, south, east, what, like 4 points of the compass.
Mhm.
So that became 4 of the zones. And then each of those zones also were kind of themed against a larger concept, like there was sort of a love theme to one
Yeah.
area, which we attributed to the Pigsy character, which
Mhm.
I know he's not traditionally viewed as a romantic
Um,
character in terms of uh, like a like a romantic comedy view.
mhm.
But there was, at the core of him, he does have a love, weirdly enough, for his wife. He's not, he doesn't really demonstrate that well in the
Yeah.
story by our standards, but there was a love to it. There was a heart to it. There was something like
Mhm.
that. Even his kind of gluttonous behavior kind of tied it to a love of like a need to fill this void of love in his heart.
Mhm.
So it made sense to turn that area to that. I think we did the Sun Wukong, we decided to make that the like a children's area. It's always, in general for a theme park, you probably need
Yeah.
a children's zone. So
Yeah.
that was a larger children's zone. Um, Honestly, I think like one area we focused on kind of some of the darker story elements. So that was an area where we put one of the thrill rides because we could have a little more aged up type of experiences in that area.
Mhm.
So it is again like breaking up age components, reasonable things to keep people together,
Mhm.
keeping the teenage area away from the kids area. So,
Sure.
you don't want them next to each other
Yeah.
because nobody
Yeah.
likes teenagers. So.
Yeah.
So I think like then we built the program mix based off of that, and then there's a number of exercises we do to talk about rides and ride systems with the clients and
Mhm.
things that they find interesting. So we did a day on just breaking down what the rides are, what they can be, what basically a list of every single ride system available, and like we worry about how we theme it later, but let's
Mhm.
start breaking down these ride things, and then once you do that, the capacity number has to match our total goals and our zone goals. And then, there's a little bit of give and take on that side of it.
Mhm.
And then, the program was set. And then Juan had to take our ridiculous program and find a way for it to structurally make sense within the actual flow of the park and the
Yeah.
land. And then, of course, then it led it to the next level of it's not that it's so 1, 2, 3 steps because you're thinking about everything along the way, but
Yeah.
then it do okay, what is the visual language of these facilities to understand what they are.
Sure. It, I guess taking a step back, what was different about the client party on Journey to the West that allowed them to actually construct the park compared to the hundreds or thousands of other developers or governments in China that were trying to do the same thing during the period?
It's an interesting
Yeah.
one because they built the park during COVID. They opened it during COVID. I mean, I didn't think anything was open, and
Yeah.
they really grand opened during
Yeah.
the middle of the lockdown.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I,
I think.
I would say one, their goal, I don't know if every client's goal was to actually build a real theme park
Right.
at the time. We know that there was a stretch of time where people were, the secondary housing market was not allowed to be built unless you had, you know, you couldn't get the permits to build it, but if
Yeah.
you had a theme park that failed, then you get the land and you could do something with it. So I
Right.
think they weren't ever that. Their goal was to build the park. They had a very clear desire to turn
Mhm.
Huai'an into a tourist destination in a big
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
Uh, so there was that, like, they were dedicated. I'll give them
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, the head of the project, again, like I said, was a very reasonable person,
Mm.
and I think he understood the importance of things being fun. And that sounds silly, but a lot of people lose sight of the fact that the place has to be fun.
Mm.
People want to go there and spend money and wait in lines for 2 hours, and well, hopefully not 2 hours, but it has to be fun.
Yeah.
So he understood that side of it, that you had to balance the traditional storytelling, the the you know the need to be respectful of the IP,
Mhm.
but you also had to, you could not do a one-to-one perfect translation of the book
Yep.
because it doesn't actually fit like anybody's interested experience. So he
Mm.
understood that balance, I think, in a very strong way.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time researching, like they did luckily get to travel and leave China and journey around and discover theme parks and see what the world had to offer. So I
Mm.
think that was a huge benefit for them
Yeah.
because that gave them a much better understanding of what things should be versus, just going to the regional parks in China, especially at that time. I know things are a little different now, but at that time, it was basically it was Chimelong and OCT, and
Yeah.
I guess if you could go to Hong Kong, you could get to the park
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Disney and the Ocean Park or
Yeah.
Ocean Gateway. So, it was a different time where things are a little obviously this is pre Shanghai Disney wasn't open yet, I think, when we
Mm.
were working on the project. So they didn't even have experience in that yet.
I
So
see.
things have changed where the exposure to what it can be and what it is different.
Mhm.
But they at the time put the effort of traveling and
Yeah.
really researching and really understanding it. And it helped guide their ability to make decisions.
Yeah.
Um, we sort of built design parameters or concept parameters to help people make decisions.
Mhm.
Because it's not just about, it's like, it's sort of the idea of like in a brand. If a brand, not saying that this is about brand, but if you have a brand represents this.
Mhm.
And then this is what you say. This is what the marketing says. This is what the research says. This is what it is. And you're like, oh, but I like this. Like, well, the answer is simple. The answer is no, because it's
Mhm.
outside the circle. We don't
Mhm.
have to think about it. Like, it's a way to make decisions faster
Yeah.
because oftentimes you could get stuck in this idea of like, well, what should I do? Is this right? Is that right? What's wrong? What's good? What's bad?
Mhm.
Especially the concept, like I don't prescribe to the idea of good and bad.
Mm.
It all depends on what fits your goal, what
Sure.
fits the audience goal. And
Yeah.
if you like it and they want to go to it, for our work, it is de facto good. Regardless of my personal taste says, wow, I can't stand that. But who
Mhm.
cares? That's not what matters. What matters is does it fit the parameters of what they're trying to do?
Mhm.
Creatively, structurally, operationally, thematically. And when you set these parameters, kind of lock them down,
Mhm.
it makes the ability to make decisions a lot faster.
Sure. Yeah.
We try to be practical and fast because when you start when something has a problem and you start discussing that problem for too long, that is a sign that something is not working. So you need to be capable to make the decision. Okay, if this is taking too long to decide if it's good, bad, or not, it's because it's not working. You don't try to push this idea or
Mm.
force this idea because in the end, it will not be good.
Right.
Be practical. Go with something simpler or other direction that is more fluid for the design.
Yeah. Interesting.
I do have a belief that if people are passionate and believe in something, they're more willing to find a way to make it work
Right.
versus just kind of doing it because it's your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important to get people to feel even a sense of ownership over the ideas,
Mm.
feel like they're part of it, and feel like they're actually really not just involved cursory, but they're
Right.
really like an instrumental piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Because then, they will fight a little harder to make sure that it's done and done in a way that makes sense.
Mm.
And typically they understand it a little better, what
Yeah.
the end it is.
Mhm.
So I think like just telling people this is good, you're wrong, do this, and we know what we're talking about,
Yeah.
it makes it hard because eventually, like design side, we will be off the project at some point before it's built.
Yeah.
And whoever carries on that torch, if they're just doing it to
Mm.
just do it,
Yeah.
I do think it suffers. The whole process suffers
Mm.
because they're not really like invested into it like emotionally,
Yeah.
less financially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's great advice. Do you guys, you have any thoughts about where the industry is headed in general these days? You know, post-COVID, things are opening. Some places are breaking records. Some places have stagnated. But you know, it just and the center of activity, you know, geographically seems to have shifted a little bit. But I'd be interested in learning what you guys see in terms of trends.
Well, I don't I don't think this is personal, right? I don't think that there is a one direction of this. I remember a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when with the VR thing started to explode, everybody saying, "Oh, this is the future. This is the future of theme park." And I was always saying, I don't think so. Imagine you have thousands of people assisting to a theme park. They cannot be online just to use a couple of goggles
Yeah.
and wait per hour just to see something that you can do it at home,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think there are interesting combinations, like the poster with goggles, and you create your own story. Okay, it's a good concept.
Yeah.
Practical, probably not so much because it's a process, especially in this time after COVID. People want things to clean up. You kind of have like a thousand of goggles permanently clean or septic,
Yeah.
and the theme park. One of the key points is to keep people moving, like more visitors,
Yeah.
more people enjoying. When you go to a theme park, even here at Disneyland, and you know that you will go and spend 4 hours per attraction, you think twice. When right? You say, okay, so I will spend 10 hours there, 12 hours, I don't know how many
Yeah.
hours, but more than half of that, I will be standing on a line,
Right.
right? So, okay, uh, when you went once, you probably will think twice the next time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think that that is the way to follow.
Mhm.
I think it can be useful in some ways, but I think that for now things will continue more or less as they are. Probably the trend I saw the trend in China, especially, is small uh, indoor theme parks or family centers, like the one that we just finished. Actually, the one that we finished is online, so it's kind of public. We designed that. It's a for Max Martin, that's a client,
Mhm.
and it's based on the Snoopy characters.
Mhm.
It's
So
a night card and the Teletubbies.
yeah,
Mhm.
and so that is you can find that the press release is online. So
Okay.
we designed that,
Yeah.
and uh, I think that's mostly the trend, at least in China, right?
I see.
The rest of the world, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what will happen with the rest. I think that the number of big, super big theme parks is kind of limited because you cannot put those monsters everywhere. I mean, they need to be in specific places. I would like to have theme parks everywhere, but uh, you need to find the right site, the right location for that. One of the examples was Euro Disney. At the beginning, was struggling for years to catch up. Now it's doing well, but it took
Mhm.
some time. You
Yeah.
cannot put theme park like that in any place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would say, yeah, the idea of more family entertainment centers seems to be the thing at certainly in China, or mostly talk about China now.
Yeah.
It does seem to be to do with it, and it makes sense. You know, you have a suburb of 4 million people.
Yeah.
Actually, probably build a theme park there, it's large enough. But it's, like it makes sense. They need entertainment, they need something. And a lot of people are looking for an indoor-based experience because, I mean, obviously we know seasonality is a major effect in terms of entertainment-based things, operationally, attendance-wise, as well as even just, yeah, everything. Um, let's see, the pandemic obviously shook everything. I do wonder how long, like, what the long-standing limitation in terms of people's willingness to go places will be, because I assume eventually that's going to drop. Like there's not there if there's a reticence, it's gonna continue to fade away the further we get away from this. Assuming there's not something else that comes in that is destructive of some nature. And even if it is, I think it has to be greater than what was there, because I think there is, again, there's blowback against what you know the seriousness that was portrayed of the pandemic, regardless if it's right or wrong.
Mm.
In terms of like technology changes, I'm also with Juan. Like the reason, like my theory, at least my thinking for like VR or these types of experiences. One, theme parks, people travel in groups. You go as a group. It's a shared experience. It's not fun to share an experience if you're all wearing goggles and you can't see each other. But it's just not. It's not the same thing. You want to sit next to somebody. You want to get on a ride and hold their hand or do whatever. You want to be connected with people. Like you do travel in groups when you go to these things. Most people do not travel by themselves.
Right.
So there's the shared experience aspect. I do think in terms of pure media, pure 3D, personally, I don't think it looks real yet. And
Mm.
I think our minds know that and
Yeah.
somehow says like, well, this isn't real. While something that is physically real, regardless, it just feels more like you're in another place.
Hmm.
Like you're not faking it. I mean, obviously it's all fake, but
Yeah.
you feel more genuinely in a place. Like you go into Pirates of the Caribbean, it feels like you're there. If
Yeah.
you're wearing goggles and sitting on a pod, you
Hmm.
would know I'm not really there, and it feels fake. So I think there's something like embedded in us as humans that recognize like the more fake versus the less fake.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, Now in terms of media utilization, I do think like we're hearing a lot of talk of more screens, more things like that, but maybe as like the far backgrounds,
Hmm.
like you do the walls covered in screens where you could do some type of fantastical background, but you also have physical structure in front of it. So it's more of like backdrop enhancement of an environment
Hmm.
versus like a static, like what used to be maybe statically painted
Yeah.
or just lit.
Hmm.
Now you could do something that's a little more dynamic, but it's not the core of the experience. You're like when you're walking into the immersive environment, it's not walking to a cube of 4 screens. I know they are doing such things, but I think like it's more enhancement
Hmm.
of the physical. So you still need the physical structures and sculpts and all that good stuff. You need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, people like to take photos standing next to stuff. And I don't think anybody cares, or I think the average customer is not interested about taking a photo of them standing next to a video screen.
Yep.
Doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem real, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I think that for example, the technology that they use, for example, to shoot Mandalorian or all these new Star Wars shows with this kind of a giant screen that they project the movie, and the actors interact with that screen, and the props in front create a very almost real scenario or environment. I think that that technology, I don't remember the name, will reach theme parks eventually with time.
Mm.
It's super expensive now, but eventually in the future, I think it will be very popular because
Mm.
you can create the real thing
Right.
uh, interacting with you. Everything moves, the props, everything. You are there,
Hmm.
right? You are in
Yeah.
another planet. You are in another uh, 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 under the sea or whatever. I think that can be one of the main step up for the theme parks in the future.
Mm. What do you see as the possibility of like smaller format indoor attractions? Like, in recent years, there's been more like immersive and interactive museums. There have been interactive theater is like a very big trend as well. And these are all just they're much more smaller format and they're indoors, but it seems to they command very high ticket prices at the same time, although the visitation is much lower. Do you think that this is like a lasting trend, or just a continuation of things that have been happening over the last few decades?
I think I think that is something that is increasing with the time more and more,
Mhm.
and I think it's good. They incorporate these different technologies in museums and theaters, not even in those places, in restaurants. They start using some kind of theming like that,
Yeah,
or in shopping malls. The entertainment factor with that kind of things is more than ever a point that they consider to attract people.
mhm,
People, no matter what, if you are in a shopping mall and you have a small space and you create something there, just an island with fake trees or something, people will go there.
yeah,
They feel attracted to that kind of things.
yeah,
For kids or for them, oh, it's a nice place to sit. Oh, look at that. We are inside like a pirate ship.
yeah,
Even if you create a static environment, it's nice for people to take photos or to sit for a while, and
right,
they enjoy that. So even you create right now are fantastic uh, um, projection mapping that follow different shapes. Those are excellent things to attract people
mm,
and everywhere, not even in small spaces.
sure,
I
sure,
think that's a trend that will continue more and more everywhere, for sure.
yeah,
Like the concept, like see interactive museums. The concept of interactive exhibitry is not new.
yeah,
Been around a long time.
sure,
And it seemed it was a little more focused on like more targeting like young people.
yeah,
And that's like now they seem to be integrating into not just young people's museums.
mhm,
And I think as people have, like the younger people grown up with this type of interaction, they expect it in the larger, so like even in art galleries and things like that.
right,
Um, so that I feel like is more just a progression of what already is there. It's
yeah,
not like some game changing different
sure,
way of learning or new, or it's not like that. It's it's not like they've created the anti-gravity machine or something like that.
yeah,
It's it makes sense that that should continue on because it's just an enhanced, like there used to be maybe an animatronic that would do very limited movement and it would talk. They had things like that. Now it's a little more.
yeah,
Now, if that's the only like the digital screen rooms, I think that they could be very interesting. But if every single thing in a museum is one digital screen room to another digital screen room, that's where I think you'll get overloaded because at the end of the day, the mind knows it's not real.
yeah,
So
yeah,
going to one is okay, or two, or
mhm,
three, but if that's the only thing that you get at the experience, it feels synthetic.
yeah,
Versus like the Museum of Ice Cream, which is just a bunch of sculpted stuff that's fairly
right,
simple, that people seem to enjoy.
yeah,
So,
yeah, understood. Okay,
But it's a entertainment is something that is more popular, and it's more common for people to look for that kind of things.
yeah,
Probably a few years ago, it wasn't so well known, and were a specific point, and you can see that kind of things. But today, you start seeing some pieces of these entertainment areas
mhm,
everywhere you go.
yeah,
Installations, even for example, in Germany, in I think it's Hamburg, these are the largest train table in the world.
yeah,
Okay, a few years ago, probably no one knew about that, but this is since forever they have that. Now I think it's one of the, if not the main attraction with more tourists visiting the place in the city. Uh, Even that people go to see some miniatures is attracting public. So I think it's also a matter how to sell that, right? Uh, if that exists, if no one knows,
Mhm.
it will die. But now with social media, everybody knows everything, and
Mhm.
it's spread like a web everywhere.
Yeah.
So uh, I think that will collaborate to expand the entertainment thing all over the world more and more.
Yeah.
I would
Uh,
say as a interesting notable thing that we were told at the last project is it seems in China there is a concern of children using cell phones. So they would say, please, nothing that involves kids holding phones.
Mm.
No AR, no media things, no connectivity with a phone to a ride or a attraction or anything like that. Like, we don't want kids on the phones. We want them
Yeah.
running around and moving. We want them playing.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting where I feel like only a couple years ago, we're like, oh, it should be an AR game that, like a
Yeah.
Pokemon Go inside a park that we can
Right.
control flow and blah blah blah. They
Yeah.
seem to be like they were actually opposed to like, no AR, nothing holding a phone.
Huh.
So I don't know if this is an ongoing thing, but it makes sense.
Interesting.
Parents are concerned about kids holding phones.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
for small kids, eventually they grow up a little bit, and then we go with the phone everywhere.
I
Yeah.
know, and for every parent says they care, I see a million kids walking around with tablets all day, so I don't know, but
Yeah,
I
but
understand that
it's
seemed
a, it's
that
a
wasn't dictate. That was a client-based dictate. That's a no, none of that. And I don't know if it's pervasive everywhere, but we did encounter it the last project.
Yeah.
but it's more popular every year. I
Mhm.
I I, I am a professor at art center. I'm teaching several classes, different classes, and classes are full, and every year they have more students in on the entertainment concept track illustration, and more and more and more. It's becoming very popular.
Mhm.
Uh, and most of the people, most of the students are coming from Asia. The majority of them.
Mm.
There are classes with no Americans. Every student is from Asia or other country,
Mm.
mostly China, Korea.
Mhm.
Uh, but and and that's why I think now it's something more common. When I was young, seeing something like this or artists or looking for concept art was something really rare.
Mhm.
Even get a book.
Yeah.
Look at this. It's a unique book. It's only one book about this. Now you have books for every movie, for every game. The art of this, the art of that.
Right.
So it's spreading a lot.
Mhm.
I like that. For
Yeah.
me, it's fantastic to have all the books. And but it wasn't like this before.
Yeah.
So
Huh.
I think that we continue this trending.
Yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Just as a side note, for that point in China that Linus made, actually we're seeing a lot of activity, not from traditional theme parks, but from developers who want to make like educational camps, like nature camps. Um, uh, yeah, so like outdoors adventure park experiences with like nature camps, multi-day experiences where the kids stay and like do nature activities as kind of like a supplement to their traditional education. But yeah, just very, very tech free.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, we know like when we did a lot of like the urban planning and the residential side, there's unfortunately for the amount of people in these urban areas, there's not a lot of park. And we
Yeah,
know that parks are not something that are economically viable for a developer to make.
right.
So unfortunately, they just do nothing most of the times, or they used to do nothing.
Yeah.
So we understand like there's always been this like, well, what do? We need the kids to go somewhere. And obviously, they don't have traditional like yards and things like that. So you do like, what do you, if you don't have parks, you don't have yards, they gotta do something. They gotta go somewhere. They gotta
Yeah.
have that active play somewhere.
Yeah.
you know, So
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear, we hear people have an interest in that. That's like, we think that's a good idea. Like, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
that experience doesn't need to be technology based.
Yeah. I see. Okay. Well, I want to be respectful of both of your times. Thank you for this conversation. It's been great. Do you have any parting thoughts, or bits of advice, or anything you want to
Uh,
mention?
as a as a design, I'm an architect and urbanist. That's my title.
Mm,
But also uh, work as a concept artist, right? And I'm teaching that in art center too.
mhm,
But I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm doing this because I really love to do this, designing, drawing, painting, all that. I think that I hope for me it's nice to see this increase in number of people liking these kind of things.
mhm.
I think it's a good future for the industry, even if we have very slow or bad moments like the COVID, and right now it's a kind of bad moment for the game industry too. But I think in general it will be a good future in the long run. So my hope is they will that no that we have no other COVID again. That's my main wish for the industry. Uh, and I think that uh, I hope this continue everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, I think a lot of times people, they want to look for something, some special magical future thing.
Mhm.
And I think, and it sounds boring to say there isn't,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that there can't be, continual change and improvement. It's just not, as they like to say, the game changer. Like, there probably isn't really a game changer. It's
Yeah.
just like consistent, steady, slow improvement. But these things work. These things are fun. These things are entertaining. These things have value and are meaningful. And it's okay to, I'm not saying make the exact same thing over and over again, but
Mhm.
to not like pursue something that is so, like, again, a trend that it may it may be like a little pop hit of something. It's not
Sure.
going to change everything, but it can be incorporated. So it's more like being realistic of that and recognizing there's nothing wrong with continuing to doing like fundamentally solid work that, you know, that at the end of the day creates an immersive fantasy
Mhm.
world that people can experience, that people can explore,
Yeah.
and people want to come back to. Like, that's kind of like at the end of the day, like what they want to do. And it's a combination of not just attraction, not just like ride, not just this, it's the whole thing, you
Mhm.
know. So
There's only one thing that this is a theme that we can discuss for days, right? That is affecting every industry is the AI.
Yeah.
That can be something really serious for
Mm.
the industry in many ways. That can affect to the point that probably I will not say it will destroy the industry, but it will destroy partially the people working industry in the industry,
Mm.
depending how we take that. As a technology, it's great, but depend how we use that can be really bad.
Yeah.
Uh,
okay, that does bring up one thing because I think it's an alternate story, but it applies to AI. It's my understanding we've been actually having a weird struggle finding interpreters and translators currently. We do have some core people, but a lot of them, they're not staff employees. They're
Sure.
outside, and they are suffering in a big way.
Mhm.
And the main reason is because people say, well, why do I need to go to a translator? I could just use AI,
Mm.
and they use AI, but like invariably the AI does not really grasp it correctly. So then they go to the translator and say, okay, you need to do a review and fix it, but we're not going to pay you because we already paid for the AI. So like maybe 20% of the normal fee. But
Mm.
the reality is they have to read the whole thing and translate the whole thing. So
Right.
AI under the auspices of saving the industry, of making it so cheaper, literally is taking skilled people out of the workforce to the point where they have to go find something else to do and leaving us with absolute mediocrity. This is a problem. You cannot like, and I know people that work on AI on the other side, and I know they believe in it, and I know they have a fervent zealotry in how much they believe that it will work and it will fix it. It's not greed. It's that they truly believe this will change the world. And at this stage, it's not, and it is hindering certainly the interpretation and translation world. It is getting rid of skilled people and basically ridding the marketplace of people who are capable. And it is
Mm,
filling with mediocrity. And my fear is that people are going to do the same thing with design, because the reality of this is design is not drawing a picture. Design is not painting a building or getting sunlight. Like design is the idea behind the design.
right.
The drawing is just the expression of the idea. And people seem to forget that the idea is important. And like,
Yeah.
oh, but I can get the expression side done. I'm like, but the expression doesn't mean anything without the idea.
Yeah.
And that's my fear, is that we're looking at the wrong place to save. And like anything, you jump too far into something and don't let it slowly work its way into the system, you end up getting rid of people who are capable, and then you rid the world. Like you stop like it started with like artisans training, younger people, like almost like the old craft guild. It's
Mhm,
still the same kind of thing. People may go to college, but at the end of the day, they're training and learn in different environments, like they have a mentor, whatever.
mhm.
And if you start cutting out all the mentors,
Yeah.
because you claim they're overpriced and AI could do their work,
Yeah.
you are cutting off like literally the process of how the whole system can survive.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-technology.
Mhm.
I just want people to like, if you're gonna adopt things, you gotta adopt it in a much, much methodically, I hate to say slower fashion,
Yeah.
because it doesn't achieve the results that they think is gonna achieve, and there is a harm in jumping in and getting rid of everything else.
Yeah.
There's my soapbox.
Yeah, but the problem is that there will always be clients that they will not care about that. I remember one client that we have in the past that they abort the project in the middle. They never pay us, and when we try to deal a number, say, okay, give us something for this
Mhm.
at least. You say, why I should pay that amount? It's just a little drawing. No, you are not paying for the drawing. You are paying for my 30 years of experience designing this, not the drawing.
Mm.
That's the value of this, not the paper.
Yeah.
But some people or some clients, they don't see that. They don't, or they don't want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but anyways, probably those people will use AI in the future.
Yeah.
That's the danger of this.
Yeah. It does seem like there would be an opportunity for people to be using it. I mean, responsibly, so that there is a very. It does seem like AI can get the job done in many cases up to a certain point, like a 50-60% level. But for true excellence, you need humans,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's my hope that the pendulum will start swinging the other way, and at some point, people will recognize, um, what true excellence is, and demand something that maybe is like a hybrid of humans overseeing AI, or just an all human team or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's only natural, like it's sort of like when color was first introduced into film. Color was this bright, crazy, like wild colors, wild everything, because it was so exciting. And then once they kind of figured it out and they let people actually utilize it, and it migrated to real like images that had a more like reasonable palette, reasonably create like images that to this day now have become this.
Yeah.
But it's like anything. The new technology comes out, everybody jumps on it, everybody tries to do something with it, and sometimes unfortunately like get misguided in how it's utilized, and it's like the wrong belief, and then it can migrate into something that is usable.
Right.
It's just, I hope that they don't like in my translator story, we need the translators. And
Yeah.
if they all start going out of business, it's a
Yeah.
problem. It's a problem
Yep.
for us.
Absolutely. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but as I say, it's something that we can talk
Yeah, yeah.
for days,
yeah,
and we will not find a perfect solution yet.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, all of these insights, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Hey, Juan, thanks for reaching out as well. And I'm sure we'll talk in whatever sometime soon, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want.
Yeah. Talk soon. Take care, both of you. Thank
all
you.
right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Bye.
Nice. Bye bye.